Yes, we get it, South Carolina fans. He left you. It sucks. Now get over it. Quit slandering this young man and act like a grown-up.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about this whole narrative around the South Carolina Gamecocks fans and them attacking Juice Wells and why that was due to the fact that he was supposedly cleared from a foot injury and he refused to play while then he transferred. There's another part to this story, though, that makes the first part maybe a lie. Practice did happen yesterday, and we heard from Suntarine Perkins about his weight goals before this football season. Ole Miss added a former New York Giants head coach to his all-field staff, and Eric Musselman has taken the USC job, and all the analysts says that Arkansas is coming for Chris Beard. I have thoughts. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Also, a special thanks to the Grove Collective for helping make the Juice Wells interview happen. Go to thegrovecollective.com/march to victory and join today. So, an interesting thing happened. We did an interview last night with Juice Wells. We did a clip like on Wednesday, just a 15-second clip for Ole Miss fans about why he picked Ole Miss. And he talked about wanting to win. Yes, Ole Miss is a playoff caliber team and a quarterback that had experience in the SEC, and Jackson Dart has all of that. And that's what Juice Wells was trying to say. South Carolina fans, it was like, I don't know, picking off the scab. And they went back to when he left back in December. And my mentions were destroyed for the better part of 12 hours. Enjoyed it, but better off, they were destroyed. Well, this was the story that was the majority of these fans' angst towards Juice Wells. And that was that he was injured at some point during last season. The doctor cleared him to come back. He refused to do so when he transferred out and took the NIL money in the process. I think that is basically the Cliff's Notes version of what happened. The problem is this. In good shape? Are you good to go? What's the timeline in the situation there?
So we're currently coming up on the tail end of everything, with surgery and recovery and stuff like that. So now it's just a process of, getting my feet back under me and just getting back to, moving correctly and stuff like that. It was a Jonesboro fracture. I had to go back in there, get a little bone graft and get a screw, but now everything is moving real smooth now. So we coming up on the tail end of things, and I should be back moving around, pretty soon.
Okay. Here's the problem the South Carolina fans are going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to come to grips with. If their story about what happened with Juice Wells was remotely true, this would not be happening. Because one of two or three things happened when he was at South Carolina. Now, when I interviewed Juice Wells, he did not say one disparaging comment about the South Carolina Gamecocks. You can go back and listen to the video that was done last night. It's free and available for everybody on the site on the YouTube page. He did not say anything disparaging about South Carolina. He actually talked about them beating Clemson and Tennessee in 2022 and the games they had and what went into the lead up to those games. But people are going to talk about this made up story about Juice Wells not being hurt, refusing to play, taking the NIL money and transferring. That is a narrative that has been established and is not warranted. I don't think it's fair to the kid, and I don't think it's fair to like Shane Beamer, because if that didn't happen, it didn't happen. The three things that could have happened in this situation. One, he was misdiagnosed by the South Carolina team doctor, and I do not believe that happened before anybody says anything. I do not think that happened. Two, it's a Bud Kilmer Varsity Blues hurt or injured discussion. Juice, are you hurt or you're injured? Can you stand up? You need to play football. Erf and snurf. That thing. I do not think that happened either. The third thing is, whenever all of this happened and he wasn't playing and he couldn't quite get right, a narrative started to happen what people thought might be going on. Maybe somebody that had sources was talking about him just refusing to play and what was going on, when reality was he probably just wasn't right. This Jones fracture that he had was a break of his 5th metatarsal that required surgery and a screw and a bone graft. He talked about that in the interview earlier. And if that happened the way it did, there's no way during the football season he was right. There wasn't anything nefarious going on. It was just a situation to where, for whatever reason, it was not diagnosed or it was misdiagnosed or it just didn't heal right. He ended up going to Ole Miss, having surgery. He's in the process of recovering right now, and he is going to shut it down for the entire spring, but he'll be back for the fall because he's getting ready to start running around. He'll be able to take part in the summer sessions, according to Juice Wells. So all of that tells me this whole narrative that ended up with, I think, people booing Juice Wells when he got his degree from the University of South Carolina wasn't right. It was on half information. It was on what we thought went on. And that is a disservice to South Carolina. It's a disservice to Shane Beamer. It's a disservice to Juice Wells. Now, it's the way that fans completely are. Now, if you want to look at the Ole Miss thing, if you're talking about us throwing stones, yeah, I'm sure a couple of people went overboard when Quinshon Judkins went to Ohio State. But here's the thing. Ole Miss fans still aren't going overboard with Quinshon Judkins. We understand that we're in the mercenary era of football, and you cannot take, for lack of a better word, some kind of a connection with the individual players. This nameless laundry that's on the field, you want the best nameless laundry on the field, but it's nameless laundry on the field. Nobody is indispensable on the team. Juice Wells has a chance to be a really good player at the University of Mississippi. And now that the surgeries happen, I hope everything goes pretty well. He runs around and does what he needs to do. All I know is playing football with a broken 5th metatarsal and you're an athletic guy is not something that can be done. So we're not dealing with a situation with a player that just refused to play football because he didn't want to play football at South Carolina anymore. Whoever started that narrative, they were doing it with ill intentions towards the young man. They were trying to bully the young man. Even if the team doctors and the coaching staff wasn't doing it, it was a group of people in the fan base that was trying to take a hurt or injured discussion, a little Bud Kilmer type discussion with Juice Wells. I think Juice has a chance to be an absolutely electric wide receiver in this offense. I think Ole Miss knows that he has a chance to be an electric wide receiver in this offense as well. But it is time for South Carolina fans to put down the sword and not worry about it. Now, I don't care if you boo him when he gets back to the stadium. That's fine. It's this other stuff, this other extracurricular activity that is happening with South Carolina fans that's just a bad look. It's you assuming a situation and not understanding that it could be something completely else. All I know is if your story about him just not wanting to play and transfer and all of that crap was true, he would not have required surgery when he got to Ole Miss. Period. You can't argue that. Now, you can be upset about him leaving, and that's fine. That's going to happen in college sports, and we're in the age of college sports where they're taking money. Yes, there's going to be a certain amount of pressure that is going to be heaped on them. We're not dealing with the 2008 college students to where let's leave these kids alone. I get that. But it's time to move on in this situation because the narrative that caused all of the discontent has proven to be false. And we'll see exactly how it goes. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Suntarine Perkins has a specific weight game goal that he wants to hit before fall. We'll tell you about it next. Hey, did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar. You can contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is boosting every single dollar you transfer in from another retirement account with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with the 3% match. The offer is good through April 30th. Get started with Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claim is as of Q1 2024 validated by the Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to the IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep a Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfer is subject to specific terms and condition. Robinhood's IRA is available on U.S. customers in good standing, and Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. You know, are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. We did have practice yesterday, and because of the Juice Wells interview, we didn't have a practice report because that Juice Wells interview went up at 7 o'clock at night, and David Eckert is out on vacation right now, so we needed something to fill that spot. But there was practice today, and a couple of players dropped by. We heard interviews from Tre Harris, Suntarine Perkins, and somebody else. Forgot that name already. So we'll get to that in just a second. Oh, Brandon Turnage, the Oxford, Mississippi native. So you have a situation. I love that word, situation. If you listen to my show, you know that. To where Suntarine Perkins, he's played a jack position. Now, lots of people are going to look at this defense and look at it. It's like Suntarine Perkins is playing defensive end. And even I say that from time to time because honestly, that's just a lazy way to look at it. But the reality is he's playing jack. And jack is that pass rushing Will Anderson linebacker type position. It is a way to make a 3-4 and a 4-3 defense a hybrid. And Suntarine Perkins plays that mainly for simplicity. I think the goal is to get him nice and comfortable in that position, in having some linebacker coming out to where maybe he replaces Chris Paul a year from now. But right now, Suntarine Perkins said he is playing that jack position. And part of that is he wants to gain weight, and he needs to gain weight because he's probably, honestly, he looks about 205 pounds right now, but he probably played a year ago at about 190 pounds. And he's put on a little bit of weight. And he said the nutritionists and everybody, they're trying to eat a whole bunch of stuff to try and induce weight gain by Suntarine Perkins. Man, I can remember the day when that happened. When I played high school football, I was 6'2", 140 pounds, and couldn't gain a pound. Tried like milkshakes all the time. I was living at McDonald's, could not gain a pound. Rock star metabolism. Now I can sit here and think about a milkshake and I gain 3 pounds. So that's just the way that works. I understand your pain, Suntarine, trying to gain that weight. But if he gets to 220, all of a sudden there's some versatility that he can play with at linebacker or at the jack position, defensive end, whatever you want to call it. It'll allow Pete Golding to be able to move him around, and he can function at multiple spots and make it difficult on the quarterback. That, I think, is the idea. I think the number one jack in this defense will be Princely Amamielin. I think that when you look at what's going on with him, you have a situation, like I said, Suntarine Perkins says he's trying to get up to 220 pounds. Princely Amamielin's about 250 pounds. And you have TJ Dudley, who also has jack experience as well. But I think he is going to play like true linebacker type stuff. Really big deal for Suntarine Perkins to put that weight on. And because we talked to Brian Smith probably a few weeks back, and he was talking about Suntarine Perkins. Is like, hey, this guy has a chance to be SEC Defensive Player of the Year if it clicks. And the clicks for this situation will be that weight. If he can get his weight up and keep his athleticism, he's going to get better and better and better and better. Right now, he is a tweener. I think everybody needs to understand that. He is not really big enough or physical enough to play linebacker. Now he can. He's not good enough coverage to play the fifth defensive back position. And you can put him in pass rush situations on the edge of the line and just kind of turn him loose. And Suntarine makes plays. He's a really good football player. Don't hear me criticizing this young man at all. It just is what it is. Now, another player that came in for the post-practice press conference was Tre Harris. He talked about the number of the young guys, including Cayden Lee, who said he was a dog since last year. Mentioned Noreel White and talked about his battles with Trey Amos. That, I'm telling you, this is a story of fall, these battles with Trey Amos. And I just want to see them. Everybody that I talked to, even last night, Juice Wells talked about, again, being must-see TV. He says those two players, Trey Amos and Tre Harris, they're iron sharpening iron, and they're working to make each other better. One day, Tre Harris gets the better of it. The next day, Trey Amos gets the better of it. And the reality of it is Trey Amos is going to be a better cornerback for going up against this man all the time. Because according to PFF, Tre Harris is the number one graded press coverage wide receiver in the country. So he is going to make Trey Amos better. Now, another thing that Juice Wells said, if you listen to the interview, a defensive back that's kind of sticking out, he said was BT, and that means Brandon Turnage. Brandon Turnage met the media yesterday. He is from Lafayette County High School. He is a local boy that spent most of his 2019 recruiting cycle at the Manning Center. He was like there with N'Kobe Dean and all those guys trying to get them in. You have a situation where he's come home. He's playing pretty well. He's a guy that has a chance to get on the field. We always talk about Chris Graves and Amorian Walker. I think it's time that everybody starts to really pay attention to what Brandon Turnage is doing. Pretty big deal. And that's kind of what came out of practice yesterday, those three things. Brandon Turnage is playing really well at the defensive back position. Tre Harris and Trey Amos is just awesome, and the young wide receivers are doing very well. And Suntarine Perkins wants to put on some weight to get ready for the football season, and he's working hard with the nutritionist to make that happen. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A big name analyst dropped this week, and it was only the former New York Giants head coach. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time apps actually go down the closer it gets to the first pick. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices and views from your seat with their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Listen, April 22nd, that is going to be like 2 weeks from Monday, I believe. I'm going to see the Tigers take on the Tampa Bay Rays, the undefeated Detroit Tigers, although the second game as we record this has not been played. So they might have dropped that second game. But they were 5-0 when I recorded this message. I'm looking forward to actually going to see the Major League team play. The Tampa Bay Rays absolutely broke the Detroit Tigers a year ago, but now they were the last undefeated team in baseball. And I wanted to find the best possible way to see them play. And one of the ways I did that was through the Game Time app, because the one thing is the seat views, because I wanted to know exactly what it was going to look like watching a baseball game. I want to see lefties. I want to see that beautiful left-handed swing, and I can see and position myself away from home plate in a way that I can see that. Now, they have the lowest price guarantee, and Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. If you're in the same section in a row, you find a lower ticket. You can take the guesswork out of buying these tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. Really interesting stuff. Now, one thing that I want to talk about, there's a couple of things here, but the former New York Giants head coach, Joe Judge, has agreed to come on to be an analyst or some sort of an off-the-field role with Ole Miss football. Ole Miss's coaching staff is one of the best in the entire country, and it's not particularly close, honestly. I don't know anybody that can boast the star power that Ole Miss has. It is simple. Take Coach Saban's like wayward home for unsuccessful and fired coaches, and Lane Kiffin is just rebuilding that in Oxford, Mississippi. This is from PFF College. Former NFL coach Joe Judge is joining the Ole Miss coaching staff per Zach Berry from On3 on Ole Miss Spirit. Situation, he's a Mississippi State grad, so you're going to have Zach Arnett and Joe Judge. These are very people that were involved in head coaching, the last two head coaching searches at Ole Miss. Joe Judge ended up getting the New York Giants job. He lost that job, and they ended up hiring Brian Daboll, but he got it. Joe Judge is also another coach that has a tie to Nick Saban. Remember we talked about the Thanks Saban episode earlier in the week? This is yet another coach with that tie. And when you look at his special teams background, they brought in Zach Arnett, and you have Lou Spano. And offensively, there's some guys there as well, but Lane Kiffin kind of does the heavy lifting on that side. The staff is really well put together. Now, when you add in the fact that analysts can coach on the field and practice now, I believe, and recruiting is about to be split up to where on the field and off the field coaches have different responsibilities, you can bet that Lane Kiffin is going to be on the cutting edge of what's going on with this. I'm pretty excited about what can happen. Like Joe Judge, I'm not exactly, really excited about him in particular. He's just another really solid coach that is going to go into a room with a bunch of solid coaches that are going to coach a bunch of solid players, and you can see how Ole Miss has a chance to go really far in the playoff and beyond. Should be really good. Now, let's change the subject just a little bit. This from John Rothstein. He said Eric Musselman will be USC's next head basketball coach. Okay? And you're like, hey, Steve, this is an Ole Miss show. Why don't we care about that? Well, this is why. Every analyst and their sister is mentioning Chris Beard as a candidate for the Arkansas job. And I have some thoughts on this kind of both ways. First of all, Ole Miss completely saved Chris Beard's career. Chris Beard wouldn't even be able to get a job like this if he hadn't been hired by Ole Miss. He was toxic. He was radioactive a year ago. He knows that. So part of me makes me think that he is going to just basically ignore this and move on to the next coaching cycle. He's going to give Ole Miss 2 or 3 years. At least that's what a decent person would do. But the coaching game is not filled with decent people all the time. It's a situation where you think you're going to be able to predict behavior, and it doesn't exactly happen that way. So if Chris Beard leaves Ole Miss for Arkansas, which, it could very well happen. Every analyst says that this is a possibility. Okay. So it would be foolish to discount it. But I do say that I think somebody should be very appreciative of being given a chance, a helping hand at the lowest point of his life. And I think he is going to repay Ole Miss because of that. Now, if he decides to go to Arkansas and he takes that job, the first call should be to Will Wade. There should not be a second call, and should hire him right then. And everybody's going to say, well, we're being dirty. Well, if we're going to play this game and you're going to roll around in the mud, you're going to get there. It's going to happen. You hire Will Wade. What he is accused of doing, I think he has one show cause. You just do him and be done with it. But I do not think that Chris Beard is going anywhere. And I will say that again. I do not think that Chris Beard is going anywhere because of Keith Carter lending out a helping hand when Chris Beard was at the lowest point of his life. I do think that he is genuine. I do think that he is thoughtful. And I do think that he is thankful for being given that opportunity and the fact that he was able to coach major college basketball and win 20 games at Ole Miss. That's my thought on that. Now, I don't have any inside sources one way or another, and we're going to have to read the tea leaves on this to see what happens. But those are my two angles. I do not think Chris Beard is going anywhere. I think that you've heard my reasoning for that. And if for some reason I'm wrong and he does go, I think the first and only call should be to Will Wade and give him whatever he wants. Heck, you could probably get him for a little bit less money than he makes, you're paying Chris Beard, and you can put that money in the NIL fund. Something like that. But either way, I'm not really worried about it. I think everybody knows by now how I am, that I'm not beholden to any one person. I'm not worried about one person and where this will end up. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty fired up about what Ole Miss basketball did this year. And I think that Ole Miss basketball can improve itself and next year with Chris Beard. But like I said, I'm not beholden to any type person. There's nobody that's above the program. And that's the reason I can be erratic at time to time, because the people that I'm trying to actually protect is not a person. It's a brand. It's Ole Miss. That's what I really, really care about. So this week we learned about how South Carolina fans just have it completely in for Juice Wells for potentially fraudulent reasons. Second of all, Suntarine Perkins wants to gain up to 220 pounds. Tre Harris is really fired up about working with Trey Amos, and Brandon Turnage has been showing out at practice, and him getting an interview is proof of that. Joe Judge has been brought in for potentially the best coaching staff in college football. And with Eric Musselman taking USC, there's going to be questions. There's going to be people handling that. Just remember on this thing, whenever anxiety sells subs, and that's the best way to go. If you are genuinely worried about that and you're genuinely placing that worry, you're going to sell subs. So you're going to see all the sub sites talking about this, whether or not it's worth talking about or not. I've given my opinion on it, both sides of it, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have one of the most perspective-filled shows around spring practice in all of Ole Miss, the Ole Miss ecosphere. It's one of the many reasons we're the number one Ole Miss podcast, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched its first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.